This is not a place that we are finding.
A cold rain tapped against the windows of an old private archive in northern Europe. Inside that silent room, rows of ancient books and forgotten scrolls slept under heavy layers of dust. The keeper of this place, a man who had devoted his life to rare manuscripts, discovered something that should not have been there. Hidden inside a leather case, sealed with wax that had nearly crumbled away, lay a map. At first glance, it appeared ordinary, but within seconds, he felt the weight of something unnatural pressing against him. This was not a map made for sailors or kings. It was not written in Latin or Greek or any tongue that scholars knew. The ink had a dark red hue, thick and uneven, and rumor whispered that it was not ink at all, but blood. The collector stared at it, his heart steady yet heavy, as though the paper itself wanted to draw him into its folds. Around the map, strange symbols ran in lines that no codebreaker had ever cracked. Not letters, not numbers. Something else, something alive. People who later heard of this artifact began to call it the blueprint of Agartha. That name spread in whispers because the symbols were not drawn like rivers or mountains. Instead, they resembled the inner workings of some machine. Wheels within wheels, pathways like gears. The world picture here was not flat nor round, but hollow, like a vast cavern of kingdoms resting inside the earth itself. The collector was not a man of stories. He dealt in facts, in manuscripts that history could place on a timeline. Yet the more he studied this strange sheet, the less he believed it belonged to any reality known on the surface. It seemed alive, pulsing with something faint, as if the patterns shifted when one looked away. He tried to share it with a trusted scholar. That scholar never returned. Another colleague fell into madness after only one night locked away with the parchment. Those who touched it complained of hearing faint sounds, like distant voices echoing through long tunnels. One swore he could hear the turning of wheels buried beneath the earth. The map's origin was a mystery. No record named its maker. No catalog of empires or explorers placed it in time. Some believed it belonged to a secret order of cartographers who vanished centuries ago. Others said it was drawn by a man who had crossed into the hollow world and returned only long enough to put his visions on paper. His hand, they believed, was guided not by his mind but by the voices of something else, something from below. There was also the detail of the lines. At first they looked like directions, a pathway drawn carefully, but the longer one stared, the more the design betrayed itself. It resembled the skeleton of a great mechanism, a structure that could open or close. Was it a doorway, a blueprint for a gate, or a design for a machine that would turn the world inside out? The longer the eyes lingered, the less it looked like geography and the more it felt like instructions. Every corner of the map carried annotations, yet no scholar of language could name them. They twisted and curved in ways that made the human eye ache. One expert thought they looked like stars written backwards. Another swore they were mirrored words from an alphabet not of this earth. A priest once declared they resembled prayers spoken by those who never lived on the surface. Each opinion left behind only more questions. The collector locked the artifact away. But secrets have a way of escaping. In time, the story of the map found its way into underground circles, into whispered meetings between curious minds who love what they should have feared. Copies appeared, always incomplete, always strange. Some swore the map could not be copied at all, that the paper itself resisted ink, that the lines blurred if redrawn. Only the original carried the full design, and the original was said to twist the mind of anyone who studied it for long. Night after night, the collector would walk through his archive, the rain still tapping against the glass. He tried not to glance at the case where the parchment lay, but his eyes betrayed him. Something about it pulled him closer. His fingers would reach for the key without thought, as if his body no longer belonged to him. When the case opened, the air seemed to grow colder. The edges of the paper curled slightly upward, almost like a smile. And there, near the bottom corner, he noticed what many had missed. A faint line of writing, smaller than the rest. At first, he thought it was only a scratch. But no, it was deliberate. The letters revealed themselves in the light. that seemed to glow from the parchment itself. He leaned closer, tracing the words with trembling lips. They read, "Those who enter will never return as themselves." He closed the case, his hand shaking. But it was too late. The words had planted themselves deep into his thoughts. He wondered who had written them. Was it a warning left by the map's creator? Or a message from the very place it described? The days that followed felt longer. Each night, the collector heard whispers crawling through the silence of his home. At first faint, like the hum of faraway machines, then louder, as if coming from within the walls. He heard gears turning in the dark, grinding, echoing beneath the floors. His dreams filled with tunnels, endless tunnels, and a light shining from deep below. People who spoke to him noticed his face growing pale, his eyes hollow. He stopped eating, stopped leaving his study. The only thing he did was stare at that strange blueprint. The whispers in his head became clearer, shaping words that promised secrets of the inner kingdom, the land beneath the crust, the hidden sun that glowed in eternal twilight. But the more he listened, the less he seemed human. His voice carried strange pauses, his hands trembled, and at times he spoke in tongues no one could recognize. Visitors began to keep their distance, fearing what he was becoming. Still, the map waited, waiting for another hand to unfold it, waiting for another curious soul to give in to its call, waiting for someone to follow an impossible paths toward Agartha, the hollow kingdom said to be hidden below all known maps of the world. Some legends die quietly. This one refused. The map of Agartha lingered like a shadow over every man or woman who heard of it. Those who denied its power still remembered its name. Those who sought it out often disappeared. And those who found it never returned the same. The parchment slept in its case, but it was not silent. For those who listened closely enough, even from across oceans, could hear the faint turning of its gears, a promise that the hollow earth was not only a myth, but a place that could be reached, if one dared to pay the price. And the words at its edge, they remain etched into the minds of all who saw them. Those who enter will never return as themselves. A long time ago, when the world was still filled with lands unmarked on maps and seas where no compass could guide, there lived a man whose name was not remembered to those who whispered of him. He was only called a cartographer. He was not like others who measured borders or sketched rivers for kings. He was brilliant, yes, but also cursed, for his eyes seemed to see things no one else could. Where others saw simple horizons, he saw doors. Where others saw empty skies, he spoke of hidden lines connecting places that should not touch. The cartographer kept to himself, drifting from city to city, never staying long. Scholars dismissed him as a dreamer, a man who bent logic into madness. But those who dared to open his notebooks felt a chill. Inside were sketches of worlds that defied sense. Cities drawn upside down, hanging from the skies as if the heavens themselves were their streets. Oceans suspended above land, their waves frozen mid-motion. Bridges that curved into nothingness, leading to places unnamed. One page showed a mountain that bent backward into itself, forming a circle with no peak, no end. Another page revealed forests that grew downward, roots stretching not into soil, but into stars. It was said, he stared at the ground with a distant look, as though listening to voices under his feet. Some claimed he spoke in riddles at night, muttering about the inside of the world, as though Earth itself was hollow and alive. No one believed him at first. They laughed when he said he had seen it. But his words carried weight when he stopped laughing back. His eyes were too serious, his voice too shaken. He claimed he had stepped into a place no surface dweller should see. He told the skies inside the earth of a glowing sphere of light that burned like a second sun, buried deep in the planet's heart. He said civilizations thrived there, hidden from mankind's gaze, older than the pyramids, older than the oceans, untouched by time. Then came the diary. It was his only true legacy, passed from one trembling hand to another, until it vanished into secrecy. The diary was filled with sketches, not in order, not neat. Each page more disturbing than the last. A city was drawn leaning sideways, its towers bending as though gravity had shifted. A coastline curved in ways that bent the eye, as if the water obeyed a different law. Entire continents floated upside down. People walking calmly, as if nothing was strange. The handwriting grew more erratic, as the pages turned. At first, notes explained what he saw, careful lines of thought. But soon the letters twisted, words overlapped, sentences broke. His mind, brilliant as it was, seemed to unravel under the burden of visions he could not escape. It was no longer the calm work of a scholar. It was a frantic record of a man fighting against madness. One entry spoke of a stairway carved from glass that descended for miles, spiraling down into darkness. Another described oceans without a surface, waves hanging in the air like great curtains of water. He wrote of voices echoing through caverns where no man had walked, whispers that warned him to turn back. Yet he could not. Something drew him onward, deeper and deeper, until he claimed he had reached the very heart of the hollow world. And then, silence. The diary ended not with a closing thought, not with farewell, but with a sentence left unfinished. Ink spilled in the middle of a word, the line trembling as if his hand was ripped away mid-writing. That was the moment that unsettled everyone who ever dared to read it. Because when a man ends his words with a final note, one could believe he was in control. But when he does not, one begins to wonder what stopped him. Some whispered he was taken by the very world he described. Others said the hollow earth itself reached up and claimed him. The diary was never completed because the man who wrote it never returned. He was swallowed by his own discovery. But before the pages went blank, before the hand that wrote them vanished, there was one last sketch, a sketch unlike the rest. The lines were sharper, more deliberate, almost as though they had been carved into the page rather than drawn. It showed a great sphere, hollow within. Inside that sphere was a city glowing with impossible light. Suspended in the center of the earth, towers rose toward the curved sky of the inner shell. Rivers of molten fire streamed like roads of gold. At the very heart of it, a sphere of radiant brilliance floated, burning without flame, a hidden sun giving life to the kingdom within. That final image haunted every eye that saw it. The city glowed not with the beauty of paradise, but with the warning of something forbidden. The towers looked alive, bending slightly, almost breathing. The rivers curved in ways that seemed unnatural, flowing toward the light as if drawn by a will of their own. And the faces, yes, there were faces sketched faintly in the shadows of the towers, watching, waiting. After that drawing, there was nothing, no explanation, no conclusion, just silence. The diary stopped, as though the man had reached a truth that could not be written. Some who studied the sketches lost their reason. One scholar locked himself away, scratching circles into his walls, muttering about inverted skies until his final days. Another swore he saw water dripping from the ceiling, though no pipe was broken, no rain outside, drops that fell upward instead of down. He was never the same. The cartographer's curse. They called it, not because he cursed others with words, but because his visions infected the minds of those who dared to follow him. His maps were doors. His drawings were traps. To read them was to risk seeing the world not as it was, but as something else, something hidden, something waiting. And yet curiosity never dies. The diary, though incomplete, became a treasure to those who sought the truth of Agartha. For in that final sketch, in that glowing city inside the sphere, lay the promise of a world within a world. A kingdom beneath our feet, perhaps more advanced, perhaps more ancient, perhaps both. A place that mocked the arrogance of surface dwellers who thought they knew all corners of the earth. The cartographer's name was lost, but his curse remained. His diary traveled through secret hands, appearing in monasteries, vanishing into vaults, resurfacing in auctions where whispers told of buyers who never reappeared. Some claim the diary itself changed over time, that new sketches appeared when none had been there before, that lines moved, shifting when no one was looking, as if the diary was alive, still writing itself with the hand of the vanished man. The final image, the glowing city inside the hollow sphere, it lingered in the mind, not just as a picture, but as a call. For once one had seen it, the thought would not leave. What if it was true? What if under every mountain and ocean, there lay another world untouched, unseen? What if the surface was only the shell and real life glowed beneath? Those who stared too long at that last sketch often reported dreams. Dreams of falling upward, dreams of walking across ceilings, dreams of light shining from within the earth, warm and endless, yet distant as if calling from far below. These dreams did not fade. They grew stronger, more vivid, until waking life itself began to feel inverted. The cartographer may have vanished, but his curse lived on through the diary. It became not just a book of sketches, but a seed of madness, planted in the minds of all who dared to open it. Some resisted, closing it quickly, locking it away. Others gave in, staring for hours until their eyes bled tears of fatigue. For them, reality never returned to normal, and so the cartographer's story was never truly finished. It remained open like the last page of his diary, a reminder that perhaps he did not simply vanish. Perhaps he crossed over, stepping fully into the city he had sketched. Perhaps he still walks there among the glowing towers, staring out to the pages at those who dare to look. The diary still exists, or so the stories say, hidden somewhere, waiting for another pair of hands bold enough, or foolish enough, to open it. The words inside may remain broken, but the drawings speak louder than any sentence. And the last drawing speaks most of all. A city shining inside a hollow sphere, suspended in the heart of the earth, waiting for those who dare to believe. It is a place that calls, a place that tempts, a place that warns, a place seen through the eyes of a cursed man who gave his life to show what should never be seen. The cartographer is gone, but his vision is not. It lingers, written in blood and ink, etched into the minds of those who dare to dream of worlds beyond the surface. And once the vision is seen, it never leaves, for the earth may not be as solid as it seems. And somewhere, hidden deep below, a city glows in silence. The snow stretched endlessly, a white desert where the skies seemed to press down upon the earth. The team had been traveling for weeks, their boots sinking into ice that cracked under every step. They were not treasure hunters or dreamers, but men and women of science and calculation. Still, their mission was unlike any expedition before it. They followed the strange map, the so-called blueprint of Agartha, believing it would guide them to something hidden far beneath the poles. Some whispered that they were chasing madness, but none of them could turn away. The lure of the unknown was stronger than reason. The air grew colder with every mile, and the silence of the land pressed heavily against them. The compass needles they carried began to fail almost as soon as they crossed a certain line of latitude. At first, the needles only trembled, a small shake that could be blamed on faulty metal. But soon they spun in wild circles, unable to point anywhere at all. No direction existed here, no north, no south. The instruments that guided explorers for centuries were now useless. The GPS units flickered with strange symbols, showing nothing but blank space where the earth should have been. Endless voids stretched across their screens, as if the land itself had been erased from the digital map of the world. The scientists frowned, reset the devices, checked their satellites, but nothing changed. It was as though they had stepped into a region where human tools held no power. Every night they gathered around their campfires, their breath rising in silver clouds against the dark. They spoke in low voices. Some tried to explain the failures as natural, others unable to hide their unease. One of the cryptographers, a woman who had spent her life deciphering strange codes, held the ancient map in her hands. She stared at it with eyes that seemed both fearful and obsessed. She said the map was not wrong. She said the map wanted them here. The storms came without warning. Walls of snow rose like ghosts across the horizon, swallowing the world in white. The wind howled as if alive, a voice screaming across the land. The team clung to their ropes, their bodies nearly torn away by the fury of the air. And yet, each time the storm struck, it seemed to come only when they moved forward. If they stopped, the world calmed. If they pressed on, the skies raged. It was as though the land itself resisted their passage, trying to push them back. But they did not turn back. Something beyond reason drove them. Perhaps it was pride. Perhaps it was a promise of discovery. Or perhaps it was a faint sound that some swore they could hear under the ice. A hum, deep and steady, like the turning of hidden gears. At first it seemed imagination, but soon more than one of them confessed to hearing it. A sound from below, calling them deeper into the frozen silence. Days turned into weeks, and the land grew stranger. Shadows stretched too far, as though the sun itself bent differently here. The sky glowed faintly at night, not with stars, but with an eerie green shimmer that rippled like water. It danced above their tents, silent and unnatural, like a veil pulled back from the heavens. The cryptographers whispered that the map had drawn the sky long before satellites or science had ever seen it. One evening, as the team marched across a ridge of ice, their leader raised his hand. The ground beneath them trembled. A vibration shook through the snow, soft at first, then stronger, as though something alive stirred beneath. They froze, eyes wide, listening to the earth breathe. Then came the sound, a crack. It split the silence like thunder. The ice beneath their feet shuddered. Long black lines tore across the white surface, racing like lightning in the snow. The team stumbled, some falling to their knees as the ground opened. A vast crevasse split the ridge apart, stretching wider and wider. They scrambled back, snow sliding beneath them, until they reached solid ground again. Hearts pounded, voices cried out, but no one dared to leave. For what they saw inside that crevasse froze them more than the wind ever could. Light. It was not the pale light of the sun, nor the glow of their lanterns. It was a deep golden light, rising from the darkness below. The walls of the crevasse pulsed faintly, as though veins of fire ran through the ice. The glow shimmered, alive, moving with a rhythm like breath. It was not fire, not electricity. It was something else, something no one could name. The explorers leaned forward, staring into the abyss. The light seemed to call, to beckon them downward. It pulsed stronger the longer they looked, painting their faces in strange hues. No one spoke. No one needed to. They all felt it. This was the place the map had led them to. This was the entrance. The storm that had been raging only moments before suddenly stilled. The winds died, the sky cleared, and silence fell heavy across the land. The cryptographer clutched the map, her hand trembling. She whispered that the symbols made sense now. The lines were not rivers or mountains. They were paths, paths that led directly here. The leader looked into Glow and knew that everything had changed. The world they had known, the maps they had trusted, the rules they had lived by, all was nothing compared to what waited below. The earth had opened its mouth, and the light of another realm shone through. They stood at the edge of the crevasse, staring into the unknown. The glow rose and fell like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. The ground beneath their boots was steady again, yet their minds shook with questions. Was this the gate to Agartha? Was this the breath of the hollow earth, rising to meet them? The expedition had begun not as a tale of myth, but as a pursuit of knowledge. Yet as the team stood there, the silence pressing around them, they felt the weight of something larger, something beyond science, beyond reason. The world they knew was only the surface, and they had reached the skin of something greater. The cryptographer closed her eyes, whispering a single thought that none dared deny. The map had not only led them here, the map had chosen them, and below, in the glowing depth of the earth, a passage waited. The crevasse yawned wide, its walls glowing with the faint golden light that seemed to breathe from the earth itself. The team stood at its edge, gazing down into the unknown. The surface world felt far behind them now. The wind had gone silent, the sky above strangely calm, as though the land itself was holding its breath. No one spoke. They simply stared into the glow until the leader gave the command. Ropes were fixed, lanterns lit, and one by one they began to descend. The first steps into the depths felt heavy, as though gravity itself thickened around them. Snow gave way to stone, then stone to something smooth and strange, as though the walls had been carved long ago by unseen hands. The glow brightened as they went deeper, not enough to blind, but enough to paint their faces in shifting colors. The air was warmer now, damp, carrying the scent of earth and minerals. Yet what unsettled them most was not the light or the air, it was the silence. Every sound seemed to die before it fully formed. Boots striking stone should have echoed through the chamber, but no echo returned. Voices, when spoken, felt as though they were swallowed mid-air, fading to nothing. Even the clatter of metal tools was muffled, muted, as if the walls themselves devoured noise. It was not the silence of emptiness. It was a silence alive, heavy, pressing against their ears until something began to rub at their heads in discomfort. The deeper they went, the more unnatural it became. Their breath, loud inside their helmets, seemed the only proof they were not already swallowed whole. The cryptographer held the ancient map close, her lips moving in whispers, though no one could hear what she said. The leader glanced back, seeing the worry on his team's faces, but pressed forward. It was then that the walls began to change. What had once been stone now glittered with veins of crystal. At first they gleamed faintly, catching the lantern light like mirrors. But as the explorers passed, they began to notice something impossible. The crystals reflected not only their own images, but other faces. Faces of people who were not there. A scientist froze before one jagged wall, his lantern raised. His own reflection stared back, but behind another man stood, a man in dark clothing, pale eyes fixed forward, unmoving. The scientist spun around, lantern sweeping to the group, but no such figure was with them. He turned back to the wall, and the face was gone. Others soon noticed the same. A woman gasped when she saw the reflection of a child standing beside her. Though no child had entered the descent, another explorer swore he saw his own face, but older, lined with age, staring at him with sorrow. The walls showed things that could not be explained. The reflections moved when they should not. Some smiled, some wept, some simply watched. Unease grew heavy in their chests. The leader ordered them to stay together, to focus on the path. Yet how could they ignore the walls when each step revealed something new, something uncanny? The silence only made it worse. Every heartbeat felt too loud. Every shallow breath a weight in their lungs. The crystals gleamed like eyes, countless eyes, watching from every angle. Then came the voice. At first it was faint, drifting from the tunnels ahead. A call, soft and tender. One of the younger explorers stopped in his tracks, lantern trembling in his hand. His eyes widened, tears forming, and he whispered a single word. "Mother." The others froze, staring at him in confusion. He dropped his pack, his breath quickening. He swore he heard his mother's voice calling him from the dark. She had been gone for years, buried under the soil of another land, but here her voice rang clear. He stepped forward, ignoring the leader's warning. The voice called again, gentle, familiar, pulling him deeper. Two of his companions caught his arms before he could run. He fought against them, desperate to reach the sound, shouting through tears that she was waiting for him. The silence swallowed most of his cries, leaving only fragments echoing weakly in the tunnel. They dragged him back, his sobs shaking his body. As the voice faded into nothing, the team stared at one another in terror. If voices could rise from the dark, what else waited in these tunnels? The descent grew more dangerous with each step. The crystals thickened, their reflections sharper, their illusion stranger. Some explorers refused to look at the walls anymore, covering their lanterns to avoid seeing faces that should not exist. Others whispered prayers, though even prayers seemed muted, unheard by any god in this place. The silence pressed deeper into their bones, into their minds, until some wondered if they themselves were becoming reflections on someone else's wall. Hours passed, their sense of time twisted, as though days might have gone by without their notice. Hunger dulled, thirst grew sharp. Still they walked downward, deeper into the silence, the map guiding them along its strange lines. The cryptographer's eyes never left the parchment. She whispered again and again that they were close, though none could hear conviction in her voice. Finally, after what felt like eternity, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. The glow brightened here, rising from veins that pulsed like arteries across the walls. The silence was heavier than ever, a crushing weight. The explorers lifted their lanterns, and what they saw froze them in place. Before them stood a gate. It was unlike anything built by human hands. Carved into the rock, massive in scale, it rose higher than their lanterns could reveal. Its surface was stone, yet fused with machinery. Wheels of metal, gears half buried in crystal, strange rods that pulsed faintly with light. The machinery seemed alive, humming softly, though no sound reached their ears. Symbols covered its surface, the same strange writing that marked the map. The team stood in awe, fear mingled with wonder. This was no natural formation. It was a door built by something ancient, something beyond their world. The crystals around it reflected not their own faces, but shadows of figures moving on the other side. The gate did not open, but it breathed. They could feel it, a slow, steady rhythm, as though it was waiting for them. The explorers gathered, hearts pounding, their bodies trembling. The silence around the gate was absolute, yet the pressure of its presence roared louder than any sound. The map had led them here. The reflections had guided them. The voice had tested them. Now they stood before the gate, staring into the unknown. And for the first time, even the leader did not know if he wished to open it. The gate trembled as though it had been waiting for centuries to be touched. The explorers stood frozen, their lanterns shaking in their hands. As the strange machinery fused into stone began to stir, wheels that had not turned in an age groaned to life, gears grinding softly, their movements almost too slow for the eye to follow. The silence that swallowed the tunnels shifted, replaced by a deep vibration that echoed the bones of every man and woman present. The map pulsed faintly in the cryptographer's hands, the ink glowing with the same rhythm as the gate. She whispered without realizing, her voice breaking, as though she was reading words not meant to be spoken. Then, with a final grinding of stone, the gate cracked open. A seam of light burst through the divide, spilling across the chamber in golden waves. The explorers shielded their eyes, but the glow did not burn like the sun. It wrapped around them, pulling them forward. The gate swung wider, and what lay beyond stole their breath. They stepped into a world hidden inside the earth. A sky glowed above, but it was no sky like they had known. Suspended at the center of the hollow world burned a hidden sun, a sphere of radiant light floating in the air, casting warmth and brilliance across the land below. But the horizon was wrong. The horizon curved upward, wrapping overhead until it met itself. Everywhere they looked, land rose, arching toward the ceiling of the world. It was an inverted horizon, the ground itself bending into the heavens. The explorers stood on a ledge, staring into this impossible kingdom. Lakes shimmered with liquid light, glowing rivers flowing like veins across the land. Towering cities of stone and metal stretched toward the inner sun, their spires twisting high into the curved sky. Some floated above the glowing waters, anchored by nothing, drifting like colossal ships. Others clung upside down to the very ceiling of the world, entire metropolises hanging inverted, their lights blinking in patterns that seemed alive. The silence of the tunnels was gone. Here the air vibrated faintly with a hum that seemed to come from the land itself. It was not loud but constant, like the steady breath of a sleeping giant. The explorers clutched one another, overwhelmed, their hearts torn between awe and terror. For this was no myth, no dream. They had entered a realm no surface dweller was meant to see. They descended carefully from the ledge, their boots striking ground that pulsed faintly with warmth. The earth beneath them was alive, glowing softly with veins of light. Every step seemed to echo through the air, though the sound was not like any echo on the surface. It was softer, rounder, as though the world curved the noise back into itself. The cryptographer raised a map, her face pale, eyes wide. The lines upon the parchment had shifted again, forming patterns that matched the cities below. She whispered that the map was no map at all. It was a mirror of this world, a blueprint not of where they had been, but of where they now stood. The explorers looked at her with fear, but she spoke as though the paper lived, as though it knew their steps before they made them. The cities themselves were unlike anything known to man. Some were carved from obsidian and steel, their towers etched with symbols that glowed faintly in the dark. Others shimmered with crystal walls, their surfaces reflecting not only light but visions of other places, as though windows into lands unseen. The floating cities drifted silently, massive structures that defied gravity, their undersides glowing with runes that pulsed like beating hearts. Bridges of light stretched between them, pathways suspended in the air, vanishing when the explorers blinked. And then came the waters. Lakes of liquid light rippled across the land, glowing with a brilliance that seemed alive. The explorers knelt at their edge, staring as the waters moved not with a wind, but with a rhythm of their own. One reached to touch it, only to draw back in fear as his reflection shifted. The water did not show his face, but another's, a stranger's face, watching him with unblinking eyes. The explorers pressed forward, hearts pounding, minds trembling beneath the weight of what they saw. Every corner of this kingdom defied reason. Forests glowed with silver leaves, their branches reaching upward and downward at once, splitting into impossible forms. Mountains curved sideways, their peaks bending to touch inverted peaks above, forming bridges between land and ceiling. Birds of pale fire drifted across the glowing sky, their wings spreading trails of sparks that faded into silence. The deeper they ventured, the more they felt the eyes of the land upon them. Shadows moved across the ground, yet no one cast them. Whispers carried through the air, though no mouth spoke. The explorers felt the pull of this place in their bones, a weight pressing upon their minds, as though the kingdom itself was testing them. One of the scientists collapsed to his knees, clutching his head. He swore he heard voices, thousands of them, speaking in languages unknown, yet each syllable striking deep into his heart. He begged to turn back, but no path remained behind them. The gate had vanished, swallowed by stone. They were trapped, and the only way left was forward. The cryptographer raised a lantern, and the light revealed something that froze them all. High above, in the inverted skyline, movement stirred. Between the towers of the hanging city, a figure stood. It was too far to see clearly, but its presence was undeniable. A shadow among the glowing spires, unmoving, watching. The explorers felt their throats tighten. The hum of the land grew louder, vibrating through their chests, as though the world itself responded to the figure's gaze. The cryptographer whispered that they were not alone, that the map had not led them here to wander, but to be seen. The figure did not move. It only watched, silhouetted against the glowing sphere of the hidden sun, and though distance separated them, the explorers felt its eyes pierce them as though it stood only a breath away. The city of inverted skies stretched endlessly, glowing with the beauty of the impossible. Yet within that beauty lived something older, something patient, something that had been waiting for them to arrive. And now, in the silence of this hollow kingdom, the explorers knew that they had crossed a line from which no return could be promised. The light shimmered across the lakes, the towers glowed, and the figure in the skyline did not look away. The explorers stood frozen, their eyes fixed on the inverted skyline where the shadowy figure had appeared. The glowing cities of Agartha stretched above and around them, defying all reason, but it was the presence of that silent watcher that pierced their courage. None dared speak, but the air itself seemed to listen. Then, without warning, the hum that filled the hollow world deepened, rolling through the ground in their bones like the slow beating of a heart. From a forest of silver leaves nearby, shapes began to move. They were tall, their forms graceful, wrapped in cloaks that shimmered like woven light. Their faces were pale, neither young nor old, and their eyes glowed faintly with a color not found on the surface. They walked with a calmness that unsettled the explorers, as though the world itself parted to make way for them. These were no shadows, no illusions of crystalline walls. These were beings of flesh and form, yet they carried an aura of something beyond human. When they spoke, their voices did not come only from their mouths. The words rang within the explorers' minds, clear, unbroken, impossible to ignore. "We are the keepers," they said. "We guard what was never meant to be seen by the surface." The explorers exchanged fearful glances. The leader stepped forward, struggling to form words, asking who they truly were and why this world had been hidden. The keepers turned their gazes upon him, their eyes steady, their faces unreadable. One raised a slender hand, and a faint image formed in the air, a map, vast and ancient, glowing with lines that curved not across the surface of the earth, but deep within it. The explorers realized with horror that the maps of their world were lies, deliberately altered, carefully falsified. The oceans, the continents, the borders, all rearranged to erase the truth of what lay beneath. The keeper spoke again, their voices calm but unyielding. "Your kind has always drawn lines across the earth, claiming ownership of what you do not understand. But the deepest lines were hidden from you. We shaped your maps. We erased our kingdom from your history, to protect you and to protect ourselves." The cryptographer clutched the ancient parchment, her lips trembling. She whispered that the symbols she had studied for months now made sense. The map they carried was no mistake, no accident of madness. It was part of a greater design, an echo of the blueprint that the keepers now revealed. Every line drawn on the surface was a veil, a deliberate distortion. The truth of Agartha had been buried in lies so thick that few ever dared question it. The explorers felt anger rise with fear. They demanded to know why. Why keep this world hidden? Why erase the truth? The keeper's eyes glowed brighter, and their answer sent a chill through every heart. Because knowledge is not always a gift. Some truths are not meant to be carried by minds that hunger for power. You seek, you conquer, you consume. To bring the secret of Agartha to your surface would not be discovery. It would be destruction. The silence that followed was heavy. The explorers saw their world above. Nations racing for dominance, men carving land with greed. Wars waged for borders on maps. If such a kingdom as this were revealed, who would resist the urge to claim it? Who would stop the engines of war from drilling downward to seize it? The explorers felt the weight of the keeper's words press against their souls. Then came the warning. The keepers stepped closer, their eyes burning with something almost sorrowful. You may walk here, you may see, but you may not return with the truth. If you try, your world will not believe you. And if they do, they will destroy you and us with you. The words fell like stones into the minds of the explorers. They had risked everything to come this far. They had faced storms, silence, and impossible. And now they were told they could never carry the truth home. Their sacrifice was a secret that could not be spoken. One of the scientists, trembling with rage, stepped forward and shouted that humanity deserved to know. That truth belonged to all, not to hidden guardians. The keepers turned their gaze upon him, and he fell silent. They did not touch him, yet his body shook as though the very weight of their knowledge pressed him down. He collapsed to his knees, gasping, his eyes wide with visions no one else could see. When they lifted him, he could not speak, only stare with hollow terror at the glowing cities above. The explorers realized that the power of the keepers was not brute force. It was knowledge itself. Knowledge that could shatter the mind, bend the will, twist the soul. They guarded it not with weapons, but with truth so heavy it broke those who could not bear it. The cartographer held the map tighter, her hands trembling. She whispered that she understood now why the cartographer of legend had vanished. He had seen this place, had spoken to these same beings, and had carried home a truth too heavy for his mind to hold. His diary, filled with impossible visions, was not madness. It was a scream of man who had glimpsed what was forbidden. The keepers circled the explorers, their eyes fixed on each of them in turn. Their voices filled the chamber once more. You may walk further, but you may not return unchanged. The world you knew above is gone. You have crossed into what was never yours to see. From this moment, you are marked. The explorers lowered their heads. Some wept quietly. Others clenched their fists, anger burning in their chests. But none could deny the truth. They were trapped between two worlds, belonging to neither. Their discovery was their curse. Yet among them, one carried a seed of defiance. As the keeper spoke, one of the team members, a man who had remained quiet, his face shadowed by his hood, reached into his coat. His fingers brushed against the edge of the map, tracing the strange machine-like patterns drawn into its surface. He saw something the others did not. A fragment, a piece of design that seemed detachable, almost as though it had been waiting to be taken. While the keeper's glowing eyes fixed on the leader, while the others bowed their heads in despair, the quiet man slipped the fragment free. He tucked it into his pack, his breath steady, his heart cold. He told himself it was only a piece of parchment, only lines on paper. But deep down, he knew it was more. It was part of the machine, part of the design. A key. The keepers turned back toward the glowing skyline, their cloaks shimmering with light. The explorers followed in silence, unaware of the theft that had just taken place among them. The hidden fragment lay buried in the man's pack, pulsing faintly as though alive, waiting for its time to be revealed. The explorers marched deeper into Agartha, the hum of the hollow world growing louder, the glow brighter, their minds heavy with secrets they could never share. Above them, the inverted cities gleamed like stars, and somewhere among those towers, eyes continued to watch. The keepers had given their warning. The explorers had heard it. But one among them carried a truth the keepers had not intended to give. And that truth, silent for now, would one day demand a price. The explorers followed the keepers through winding paths that curved like veins of living stone. The glow of Agartha's hidden sun burned softly above them. But the deeper they went, the less of it reached. Soon the light was swallowed by shadows, and the hum of the hollow world changed into something slower, heavier, like the turning of massive gears far below. The keepers walked without sound, their cloaks brushing against the crystalline walls, their glowing eyes fixed ahead. No one dared ask where they were being led. Their steps carried them downward until the tunnels opened into a cavern so vast it seemed endless. At its heart stood a structure that stole their breath, the Library of Shadows. It was no library of wood and parchment. It was built of black stone and crystal, rising in layers like a temple. Thousands of shelves lined its walls, reaching so high that even the glowing sun at the Earth's core could not touch their uppermost rows. Upon these shelves rested tablets that glowed faintly, as if carved from fragments of starlight. Each one pulsed with a rhythm of its own, alive, waiting. The keepers raised their hands, and the tablets stirred, whispering in voices that no ear could fully understand. The explorers felt the sound not on their skin, but inside their minds, like faint words brushing against thought itself. The leader stepped closer, his lantern shaking. He reached toward one of the glowing tablets, and as his fingers brushed the surface, he felt a shock of warmth, as if the stone itself was alive. Images burst into his mind. He saw oceans split apart, revealing endless caverns below. He saw mountains hollowing themselves into cities. He saw rivers that flowed not across land, but upward into skies of fire. He pulled his hand back, gasping, but the vision did not fade. It lingered, burning behind his eyes, whispering of things that had not yet come to pass. The keeper spoke. These are the maps of what lies beneath and of what lies beyond. The worlds hidden under your feet and the futures waiting to be born. The explorers moved carefully between the shelves, each one unable to resist touching the glowing tablets. Each tablet spoke differently, whispering secrets in voices old and new. A scientist saw a vision of cities drowned by seas that had not yet risen. Another saw stars burning above a sky, filled with ships that were not of Earth. A third saw her own homeland swallowed by deserts that spread faster than time. The tablets did not only reveal the world below, they revealed the world to come. Futures twisted and uncertain, some filled with wonder, others with ruin. The explorers began to tremble. To touch these maps was to see destiny itself. The cartographer clutched one of the tablets, her eyes wide, her lips whispering words that no one understood. She saw not only the hollow earth, but layers beneath it. Worlds inside worlds, smaller spheres hidden deeper still, each glowing with its own light. Kingdoms stacked like echoes, civilizations carved into bones of the planet. She cried out that the earth was endless, that no map could ever capture its true form. Then her voice broke, and she fell silent, staring as though her mind had gone too far to return. One of the younger explorers touched the tablet and saw something stranger still. The city revealed to him was not of stone or steel. It was not of earth at all. Towers of glass bent into the sky. Twin suns burned above a world of violet soil, and creatures of light walked roads that spiraled in every direction at once. The tablet hummed louder as he stared, and he realized the truth. These were not maps of the earth alone. Some were maps of alien realms, world beyond stars, places no human had ever walked. Fear spread among the group. Some stumbled back from the shelves, refusing to touch another tablet. Others leaned in closer, unable to resist the pull. The whispers grew louder, merging into a chorus of voices that seemed to speak directly into their thoughts. Promises of power, warnings of doom, invitations to step beyond what they knew. The keepers moved silently through the rows, their glowing eyes fixed on the explorers. Knowledge is alive, they said. It feeds, it grows. It consumes those who cannot bear its weight. Be careful what you choose to see. For one seen, it cannot be forgotten. The explorers felt those words press against their hearts. One man pressed his palms against his ears, trying to block the whispers, but the voices were inside him now, deeper than sound. Another woman began to laugh, her voice sharp and broken, swearing she had seen herself crowned queen of a world made of crystal. She clutched the tablet to her chest until the keepers took it from her hands, their touch silencing its glow. The leader tried to bring order, to call them back to reason, but his own voice was weak, for even he could not unsee the ocean split before his eyes, the mountains collapsing into cities. The Library of Shadows had planted its seeds inside him, as it had inside them all. Then, as they stumbled through the endless shelves, the cartographer let out a cry. She had touched another tablet, and her body froze. The others rushed her side, but when they saw the image upon the glowing stone, their hearts turned to ice. It showed their own faces. Each of them stood carved in light, their eyes wide, their bodies pale. Beneath their images was a single word, etched into the tablet in symbols that all could read without question. The word was simple: lost. The explorers stared at the vision, their blood cold. None spoke, for there was nothing to say. The tablet had named them, marked them, sealed their fate within its glowing lines. The whispers grew louder, surrounding them, filling the library with voices that spoke their names again and again. The shelves pulsed with light. The tablets glowed brighter, and the explorers realized that the library was no place of silence. It was alive. It was watching. It had been waiting for them. The keepers stood unmoving, their faces unreadable, as the explorers gazed at their own images carved into destiny. And in that moment, every man and woman felt the weight of truth crash upon them. They were no longer explorers. They were part of the map itself. The Library of Shadows closed behind them, its whispers still alive in their minds. The explorers walked in silence, their steps uneven, their eyes hollow. Each one carried visions that could not be spoken, futures of ruin, worlds of fire, faces marked with the word lost. The keepers had given no comfort. They had only watched, their glowing eyes steady, as if waiting for the cracks to widen in human hearts. The team set camp near a river of liquid light, its glow bending shadows across their tents. For a while no one spoke, each clinging to their own thoughts. But silence never lasts. It was one of the younger men who broke it first, pointing out that something was wrong with one of their own. His voice trembled as he said the words, but once spoken, no one could unsee the truth. One of the explorers had changed. His skin, once pale from the long journey, now shimmered faintly with the same glow as the river. His eyes were no longer steady. They reflected the inner sun like mirrors, as if holding another light inside them. His hands shook when he reached for food. His breath came too slow. And when he looked at the others, it was not the look of a man. It was the gaze of something unfamiliar. Fear spread quickly. Whispers passed between them, asking if Agartha itself had marked him, if the kingdom had chosen to reshape him into one of its own. The marked man denied it, insisting he was fine, but his voice sounded hollow, stretched as though borrowed from another throat. At night, while he slept, his lips moved on their own, murmuring words that no one understood. Paranoia tightened its grip. Old bonds of trust cracked. Every sound in the night seemed sharper. Every glance carried suspicion. The explorers watched each other like enemies, afraid that the glow might spread, that one by one they would all change into something less than human. Then the fragment revealed itself. The quiet man who had stolen it from a map clutched it in secret, hidden inside his pack. At first it seemed nothing but parchment, a piece of design torn from the whole. But now it pulsed faintly in the dark, glowing with the same rhythm as the inner sun. He kept it hidden, afraid to admit what he had taken, yet drawn to it with a hunger he could not resist. At night, he held it close, staring at the lines that shifted when no one else could see. And though he told himself he had control, the others began to notice his eyes, restless, watchful, never still. The fragment carried a weight beyond its size. Its glow grew stronger each day, and when the team argued, it seemed to thrum with their anger, feeding on their suspicion. The cryptographer swore she saw the lines rearranging themselves, the shapes bending into patterns that matched their faces. She begged the man to show her what he carried, but he refused, clutching it tighter, his words sharp, his trust broken. The map itself grew dangerous. Where once it had been a guide, Now it shifted with malice. Its lines twisted when they looked away, paths leading nowhere, landmarks vanishing. The cryptographer cried out one morning that the symbols were no longer symbols, but eyes watching her from the page. She swore she felt them blink. Others saw rivers that had not been there before, mountains that blocked their path, cities that stretched into nothing. Their sense of reality fractured. Some woke at night certain they had heard voices inside their own minds, whispering to turn back, whispering to move forward, whispering to give themselves to the light. One man swore he had seen the river rise from its bed and crawl toward their camp like a living serpent, though at dawn it flowed as before. Another claimed his own reflection had spoken to him in the glow, telling him he did not belong to the surface any longer. The marked man grew worse. His skin glowed brighter, his movements less human. He no longer ate. He no longer slept. He stared at the inner sun with eyes unblinking, lips moving in a prayer no one could understand. Some wanted to cast him out, to leave him behind. Others whispered that it was too late, that his fate was theirs as well. Suspicion poisoned their hearts. Old friendships turned to bitterness. Every word was questioned, every action doubted. The glow of Agartha was not only in the rivers and skies. It had entered their blood, twisting their minds. The explorers no longer trusted one another. They no longer trusted themselves. One night, as they slept, the fragment pulsed so brightly it lit the camp in gold. The man who held it rose from his tent, eyes wild, his hands trembling as he stared at the glowing lines. He whispered that the map was speaking to him, that it was showing him the true path, the path that would lead them home. The others awoke, rushing to stop him, but when they looked at the fragment, they saw nothing of home. They saw only spirals without end, tunnels twisting deeper and deeper, paths leading to nowhere. They fought over the fragment, voices raised, hands striking, eyes filled with madness. The camp tore itself apart in the struggle. The marked man stood silently in the glow, watching them with eyes no longer human, his face empty of sorrow or rage. He looked upon them as one might look at strangers already forgotten. At last the fragment fell to the ground, its glow dimming, but the damage had been done. None trusted each other. None believed the same path forward. The explorers stared into the night, listening to the whispers that rose from the land itself, each hearing a different command. When dawn came, the cryptographer unrolled the original map, hoping to restore order, to remind them of their purpose. But as the parchment spread across the ground, every heart froze. The lines had shifted in the night. The paths they had followed were gone. The landmarks erased. The symbols twisted into shapes that none could read. The map no longer showed a way forward. It no longer showed a way back. It showed nothing but endless walls and spirals, no exit, no escape. The explorers stared in silence, their faces pale in the glow of the inner sun. For the first time since entering Agartha, they understood the truth. The map was not guiding them. The map was consuming them. And the kingdom they had entered was not a place to be discovered. It was a place to be trapped. The explorers stood around the twisted map, their faces pale in the glow of Agartha's hidden sun. The parchment had betrayed them, its lines rearranged into spirals with no end, no exit, no return. The silence between them was heavy, broken only by the slow hum of the inner world. But even that hum had changed. It was no longer steady. It shook uneven, as if the very breath of Agartha was faltering. The keepers appeared once more, their cloaks shimmering like liquid light. Their eyes glowed with sorrow rather than anger. Yet their words struck harder than any blade. "You have broken the balance," they said. "The map was not yours to take. Its fragments were never meant for hands of surface. And now the kingdom suffers." The explorers turned toward the man who still held the stolen fragment. His face was pale, his eyes restless, his hands trembling with feverish devotion. The fragment pulsed with light, brighter than before, as though feeding on his heartbeat. He clutched it to his chest, unwilling to release it, whispering that it was his, that it had chosen him. Above them, the inverted cities groaned. Great towers of stone and metal swayed like trees in a storm. Bridges of light flickered, blinking in and out of existence. One of the floating cities tilted suddenly, its base cracking, spilling glowing fragments into the lakes below. The sound was not a collapse alone. It was the sound of a world unraveling. The inner sun dimmed for the first time. The brilliant sphere of light that had burned at the hollow earth's heart began to flicker, its glow faltering, shrinking. Shadows spread across the land, but they did not move with their owners. They stretched in wrong directions, bending across the ground like living things. Some twisted upward, climbing walls. Others reached for the explorers with fingers too long, too thin. Fear seized every heart. The keeper's voices thundered in unison, shaking the ground. You must destroy the fragment. Only then may the balance return. Only then may this world survive. But the man who carried it refused. His voice cracked, his words wild, as he swore that the fragment showed him more than maps. It showed him eternity itself. He raised it high, and the lines upon it shifted again, forming shapes no one could bear to look at for long. The cryptographer wept, crying that the fragment was rewriting not only maps, but their very fate. The ground trembled harder. Mountains curved inward, bending like wax. Lakes of liquid light boiled and rose into the air, spilling across the land in rivers of fire. Birds of pale flame screamed as they fell from the glowing sky. The explorers stumbled, clutching one another, but the marked man stood still, the glow of the fragment pouring through his veins. His skin shimmered, his eyes empty of humanity. They begged him to let it go. Voices cracked, hands reached, but he only smiled faintly, his lips whispering words too soft for them to hear. Behind them, one of the inverted cities tore free from the ceiling of the hollow world. Its foundations cracked, its towers crumbled, and it fell. The sound was deafening as it smashed into glowing rivers below, a city of thousands vanishing in fire and dust. The keepers raised their arms, their cloaks flaring like wings of light. Their eyes blazed with fury now. The world will collapse, they cried. All of them. What is above will break. What is below will shatter. The fragment is a wound, and the wound will spread. The explorers turned on the thief, their voices rising in desperation. One lunged to grab the fragment, but the glow flared like fire, hurling him back with a scream. Another tried to strike it from his hand, but her blade shattered before it touched. The fragment pulsed again, stronger, the rhythm of its glow matching the fading heartbeat of the inner sun. Then the shadows attacked. They tore themselves free from the explorer's feet, writhing across the ground. Shapes of darkness rose, faceless yet alive, clawing at the living. The explorers fought, stumbling through terror, their lanterns useless against the moving dark. The marked man only watched, the fragment press against his chest, his lips whispering a single phrase now, again and again. It shows me eternity. The cryptographer screamed at him, her voice broken with grief. She swore that eternity was a lie, that the fragment was killing the world. But her words could not reach him. His mind was already consumed. The explorers were torn between saving themselves and saving Agartha. If they destroyed the fragment, perhaps the kingdom could heal. But how could they destroy what they could not even touch? If they failed, they would be sealed inside forever, trapped as shadows in the library of lost maps. The inner sun dimmed again. The hollow world shook with the roar of collapsing cities, towers crumbling, rivers flooding. The keeper's voices filled the air one last time. Choose now, or be erased. The explorers turned, their eyes wide with fear and fury, but the man with the fragment only clutched it tighter. The glow poured from his hands, his skin cracking with light. His voice rose above the destruction, no longer soft but thunderous, echoing across the breaking world. It shows me eternity. And as the inner sun flickered and the hollow world began to collapse, the explorers knew the choice was slipping away. The fragment pulsed brighter than ever, a wound in the heart of the earth, a wound that refused to close. The ground of Agartha trembled like a wounded beast. The glowing rivers boiled, towers of floating cities crashed into the lakes of light, and the inverted horizon bent inward as if the hollow earth itself was folding shut. The explorers struggled to hold their footing, but the world beneath them no longer obeyed the laws of balance. Every breath felt stolen, every heartbeat uncertain. At the center of the chaos stood the man with the fragment. He held it against his chest as though it were his heart itself. The glow bled through his skin, his veins burning with light. His voice rose above the destruction, repeating the words that no one else wanted to hear. It shows me eternity. The keepers cried out with voices that thundered like storms, warning that the fragment could no longer be contained. It had to be destroyed, or all would fall into silence forever. The explorers lunged, but the man resisted, his body no longer his own. His eyes had become mirrors, reflecting not faces, but spirals of light. His hands clutched the fragment tighter with every attempt to tear it away. Shadows rose from the ground, their movements wild, their forms stretched beyond human shape. The explorers fought them off, but the shadows seemed endless, born from the wound of the map itself. The cryptographer screamed as the inner sun flickered again, dimming until the world shuddered in near darkness. Desperation tore through the group. They threw themselves at the man one last time, a chorus of rage, grief, and survival. In the struggle, the fragment cracked. A sound like shattering glass rang through the hollow world, sharp enough to cut through the roar of collapsing cities. The man's eyes widened, his mouth opened in a silent cry as the fragment splintered in his hands. A surge of light erupted, brighter than anything they had ever known. It poured across the cavern, swallowing stone, rivers, mountains, cities, shadows, keepers, and sky. Agartha dissolved into brilliance, its inverted horizon folding in on itself until nothing remained but the blinding storm of white. Then silence. When the explorers opened their eyes, they lay upon cold soil beneath the gray dawn. The air smelled of pine and sea salt. The sun above was no hidden sphere of gold, but the same old sun of the surface. Birds sang faintly in the distance, as though the world had never shifted at all. They staggered to their feet, dazed, staring at one another with empty faces. Something inside them was missing. Their memories of Agartha were shadows, faint impressions that slipped away the harder they tried to recall. They remembered fragments of light, whispers and silence, the hum of a world beneath. But the details crumbled like dust in their minds. They searched their belongings. The map was gone. The fragment was gone. The proof of their journey had vanished. They carried no drawings, no notes, no relics, only a hollow ache that told them they had lost something vast. They could not explain it, even to themselves. But one detail clung to them like a scar. Each of them remembered the words carved into that glowing tablet in the Library of Shadows, the word that had burned itself into their minds. Lost! No matter how the memories slipped, that word remained, and with it, a fear they could not shake. The explorers returned to their homes, their lives, their cities, to the world. They were the same as before. But those who looked closely saw the emptiness in their eyes, the hesitation in their voices, the quiet hours where they stared at nothing. None of them spoke of what had happened, not because they chose silence, but because they could not find the words. Agartha was fading from them, leaving only echoes, yet far from them, in a different land. In a quiet archive hidden from curious eyes, a collector opened a sealed case. Inside lay a map. The parchment looked untouched, its edges unbroken, its lines steady and calm. It was the same blueprint that had once guided others into the hollow earth, the same map that had vanished in the storm of light. The collector frowned, tracing the lines with a careful hand. The ink shimmered faintly, like veins of blood drawn across the paper. Strange symbols curved through its edges, bending into patterns that no scholar could name. At the bottom corner, written smaller than the rest, lay the words that had haunted generations before. Those who enter will never return as themselves. The collector smiled faintly, unaware of the weight those words carried, unaware of the countless lives they had already consumed. He thought only of discovery, of secrets hidden below the world, of glory that might one day be his. And so the map waited again, waiting for another hand, another heart, another mind willing to follow its impossible lines. The hollow earth did not die. It lingered in silence, waiting to be opened by those unable to resist its call. Was Agartha ever real? Or was it nothing more than a labyrinth of the human mind, twisting curiosity into madness? Perhaps the glowing cities and rivers of light were illusions born from obsession. Perhaps the keepers were guardians not of place, but of the fragile barrier between reason and ruin. The explorers themselves could no longer answer. All they knew was the silence left behind. There is a truth in maps that goes beyond lines of rivers and mountains. Some maps do not guide to places. They guide to desires. They feed on hunger for more until the seeker loses everything in the pursuit of what should never be found. Agartha was never only about a hidden kingdom. It was about obsession itself. And the map, it endures. If ever you see it, if ever the parchment falls into your hands, remember what was forgotten by those before. Remember that some maps do not lead you home. They lead you deeper. They lead you into silence. They lead you to the edge of yourself. And once you cross, you will never return as the same. The story of Agartha lingers not in stone, not in rivers, not in cities of light. It lingers in the human need to uncover what is hidden, even when it should stay buried. That is why the map always reappears. That is why seekers always follow. Because some maps do not lead to places. They lead to obsessions. And obsessions never die. If you found this story haunting, share with others who dare to wander through mystery. Subscribe for more journeys into forgotten lands, cursed places, and the hidden corners of our world. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe Agartha is real, or is it only a reflection of our own darkest hunger for what lies beneath? Like, share, subscribe, and keep your eyes open. You never know what map might find you next.